Welcome back everyone and Happy New Year. It is Mike from ManaHoarders. In this video we are bringing you a brand new commander that was spoiled from Phyrexia All Will Be One, Karumonix the Rat King. You can cast this commander for 1 and 2 black. You get a 3/3 legendary Phyrexian rat. This commander is a toxic one just like that X you dumped right before Christmas, but hey, at least you saved on presents. Anyway, other rats you control have Toxic 1, and when Karumonix enters the battlefield, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You can reveal any number of rat cards from among them, put the revealed cards into your hand, and put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. The final price for this build came in at $82.66. This does not include the price of our commander. Since we are so early in the spoiler season, we don't really have any pre-order prices to go off of. But if you are interested in this commander, this will cover the other 99 cards for you. Now let's go ahead and dive into the deck. First up are our artifacts. Bantu's Monument makes our black creature spells cost 1 less, and whenever we cast a creature spell, each opponent loses 1 and we gain 1. Contagion Clasp. Whenever it enters the battlefield, we put a -1/-1 counter on target creature, and by paying 4 and tapping it, we can proliferate. Contagion Engine. Whenever it enters, we put a -1/-1 counter on each creature target player controls, and then by paying 4 and tapping it, we proliferate and then proliferate again. Hall of Triumph. Whenever it enters the battlefield, we choose a color, and creatures we control of the chosen color get +1/+1. Icon of Ancestry. Whenever it enters, we choose a creature type. It pumps those creatures of that type +1/+1. We can pay 3 and tap it, look at the top 3 cards of our library, reveal a creature card of the chosen type, put it into our hand, and put the rest on the bottom in a random order. Mind Stone can tap for a colorless mana. We can also sacrifice it to draw a card. Skeleton Key. The equipped creature has a Skulk, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, we can draw a card, but if we do, we have to discard. Soul Ring taps to give us 2 colorless mana, and Swiftfoot Boost. The equipped creature gets hexproof and haste. Moving on to our creatures, we do have a legend helping out our commander, Marrow-Gnar. It gives all of our rats fear. We can also tap it and sacrifice a rat to put X 1/1 black rat creature tokens into play, where X is the number of rats we control. And for our not-so-legendary creatures, Burglar Rat. Whenever it enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card. Changeling Outcast. It can't block and it can't be blocked. Crypt Rats. We can pay X and it deals X damage to each creature and each player, but we can only use black mana for the X. Diseased Vermin. The Oracle text reads, whenever they deal combat damage to a player, that player gets an infection counter. And at the beginning of our upkeep, it deals X damage to target opponent previously dealt damage by it, where X is the number of infection counters that player has. Drainpipe Vermin. Whenever it dies, we can pay black mana, and if we do, target player discards a card. Ear-Splitting Rats. Whenever it comes into play, each player discards a card from his or her hand, and then if we discard a card, we can regenerate it. Gnat Miser. It reduces each opponent's maximum hand size by 1. Gnawing Vermin. Whenever it enters the battlefield, target player mills 2 cards, and whenever it dies, target creature we don't control gets -1/-1 until end of turn. Graveshifter. Whenever it enters the battlefield, we can return a creature card from our graveyard to our hand. Ichor Rats has Infect, and whenever it enters the battlefield, each player gets a poison counter. Nezumi Bone Reader. We can pay a black and sacrifice a creature to make target player discard a card. Nezumi Cutthroat has Fear and it can't block. Nezumi Grave Robber. We can use its ability to exile target card from an opponent's graveyard, and then if there are no cards in that graveyard, we flip it and it becomes Night Eye the Desecrator. This allows us to put a creature card from any graveyard onto the battlefield under our control. Ogre Slumlord. Whenever another non-token creature we control dies, we get a rat, and rats we control gain Death Touch. Pestilence Rat has power and toughness equal the number of other rats we control. Piper of the Swarm gives rats we control Menace. We can also pay 1 in the black and tap it to create a rat, and we can also use the second ability for 2 and 2 black. We can tap the Piper of the Swarm to sacrifice 3 rats and gain control of target creature. Rabid Rats. We can tap it to give target blocking creature -1/-1. Rancid Rats has Skulk and Death Touch. Ravenous Rats. Whenever it comes into play, target opponent chooses a card from his or her hand and discards it. Razortooth Rats. It can't be blocked except by artifact creatures or black creatures. Rotting Rats. Whenever it enters, each player discards a card. Ruin Rat has Death Touch, and whenever it dies, we exile a target card from an opponent's graveyard. Scrib Nibblers. We can tap it to exile the top card of target player's library, and if it's a land card, we gain a life. We can also untap it if we play a land during our turn. Septic Rats has Infect, and whenever it attacks, if the defending player is poisoned, it gets +1/+1. Sinuous Vermin has Monstrosity 3, and as long as it is monstrous, it has Menace. Skeletal Changeling. We can regenerate for 1 in the black. Stronghold Rats has Shadow, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, each player discards a card. Typhoid Rats has Death Touch. And Wave of Rats. Whenever it dies, if it dealt combat damage to a player this turn, we return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. Moving on to our enchantments, we have Phyrexian Reclamation. We can pay 1 in the black and pay 2 life to return target creature card from our graveyard to our hand. Rune of Mortality, we can enchant a permanent. Whenever it enters the battlefield, we can draw a card. As long as the enchanted permanent is a creature, it has Death Touch. Snake Cult Initiation, we enchant a creature, and that creature has Poisonous 3, which means whenever it deals combat damage to a player, that player gets 3 poison counters. Tribute to Hirobi, for the first 2 lore counters, each of our opponents gets a 1/1 black rat rogue creature token, and for the 3rd lore counter, we'll exile it and transform it. Underworld Connections, we can enchant a land, and the enchanted land we can tap and pay 1 life to draw a card. And a personal favorite of mine, Vampiric Rites, we can pay 1 in the black and sacrifice a creature to gain 1 life and draw a card. Moving on to our instants, we have Altar's Reap. As an additional cost, we're going to sacrifice a creature to draw 2 cards. Dark Ritual gives us 3 black mana. Deadly Dispute, we will have to sacrifice an artifact or a creature, but we get to draw 2 cards and create a treasure token. Death Denied, we can return X target creature cards from our graveyard to our hand. Grim Affliction, we put a -1/-1 counter on target creature and then proliferate. Succumb to Temptation, we draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. And Village Rites, as an additional cost, we're going to sacrifice a creature to draw 2 cards. For our sorceries, we have Bubbling Muck. Until end of turn, whenever a player taps a swamp for mana, it produces an additional black. Call of the Death Dweller helps us out with some graveyard recursion for our lower CMC creatures. Crippling Fear, we choose a creature type, and creatures that are not of that chosen type get -3/-3 until end of turn. Dance of Shadows, creatures we control get +1/+0 and gain fear until end of turn. Dirge of the Dead also gives all creatures fear until end of turn. Forever Young, we put any number of target creature cards from our graveyard on top of our library, and then we draw a card. Mutilate, all creatures get -1/-1 until end of turn for each swamp we control. Night's Whisper, we can draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. Read the Bones allows us to scry 2, draw 2, and then lose 2 life. Return from Extinction lets us get a creature card from our graveyard back to our hand, but we can get 2 of those cards if they share a creature type. Sign in Blood, target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life. And Spread the Sickness, we destroy target creature and then proliferate. And last but not least is our mana base. We are keeping things almost entirely basic with 34 basic swamps and Karn's Bastion. I like it because it has that second ability for us to pay 4 and tap it to proliferate. So once we've infected our opponents enough, we can use this ability and knock them out with that last poison counter. And just like that, we've reached the end of this Commander Deck Tech. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, tell your friends about us, and leave a comment down below. Let me know what Magic sets you're most excited to see released this year. I am very excited for the Lord of the Rings crossover and only wish it would come out a little bit sooner. Thank you guys for watching, I really appreciate all of your support.